You ever notice how the same things set you off every single time? Someone disrespects you and you explode. Someone questions you and you get defensive. Something doesn't go your way and you spiral. You think you're just being passionate or keeping it real, but here's what's actually happening. You're a slave, not to them, to your own emotions. Every time you get angry and react without thinking, enslaved. Every time anxiety paralyzes you and you avoid what needs to be done, enslaved. Every time you see something you want and immediately indulge without considering the cost, enslaved. You're a puppet, and your emotions are pulling the strings. And here's the part that should terrify you. Your enemies know this. The people who want to control you, manipulate you, or keep you down. They're not just watching you lose control, they're counting on it. They know exactly what to say to make you react. They know exactly what to do to throw you off balance. They know exactly which buttons to push because you've shown them the blueprint every single time you've lost it. You've taught them how to manipulate you. You've given them the map to your internal wiring, and they use it every single day. You don't even need external enemies when you're this easy to defeat from within. You're sabotaging yourself for free. Machiavelli understood something most people never learn. The person who controls their emotions controls the room. The person who can't, they're just entertainment. They're predictable. They're manageable. They're weak, and weakness gets exploited. Always stay till the end, because I'm about to show you how to cut those strings, break out of that prison, and build something your enemies can never penetrate. Brutal self-control that makes you unmanipulatable, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Let me show you exactly what this looks like. You're in a meeting. Someone criticizes your work, not even aggressively, just points out a flaw. And something happens inside you. Your chest tightens, your face gets hot, your mind starts racing with defensive responses. And before you can stop yourself, you're arguing, you're justifying, you're making it worse. And everyone in that room just learned something about you. You're easy to rattle. They learned that criticism is a weapon they can use against you. They learned that if they want to derail you, distract you, or diminish you, all they have to do is question your work. You just gave them the blueprint. If you're ready to end this civil war and become the ruler of your own mind, subscribe now. Or maybe it's different. Maybe you're the one who can't say no. Someone asks you for a favor, and even though you're drowning, even though you don't have time, even though you know they're taking advantage, you say yes, because saying no feels uncomfortable, because you don't want to disappoint them, because you need their approval, and so you overextend yourself, you sacrifice your priorities for theirs, and you resent them for asking while simultaneously resenting yourself for agreeing. That's not kindness. That's not generosity. That's emotional slavery. You're enslaved to your need for approval, and they know it. They can pull that string whenever they want, and you'll dance. Or maybe it's impulse. You're trying to save money. You have a goal, but you see something you want, new shoes, a gadget, a night out, and you buy it. You tell yourself you deserve it. You tell yourself it's not that much. You tell yourself you'll start being disciplined tomorrow. But tomorrow comes, and the same pattern repeats. Because you're not in control, your impulses are. Your immediate gratification is. And every time you give in, you're training yourself that discipline doesn't matter, that goals are negotiable, that future you doesn't matter as much as present you's comfort. And that training compounds. It becomes who you are. This is what I mean by emotional slavery. It's not dramatic. It's not obvious. It's the 1,000 small moments where your emotions override your strategy, where your impulses override your goals, where your reactivity override your judgment. And each moment by itself seems insignificant. But collectively, they're the reason you're not where you want to be. They're the reason you keep sabotaging yourself. They're the reason people can manipulate you so easily, because you've trained yourself to be manipulatable. Now let me show you what the opposite looks like. Picture someone in that same meeting. They get criticized. and they pause. Not defensively, not emotionally. They just pause. They consider the criticism. They extract any useful information, and then they respond calmly, strategically. Interesting point. Let me think about that. Or they thank the person and move on. No emotional spike, no defensive reaction, no visible rattling. And everyone in that room just learned something different. This person can't be manipulated through criticism. They tried to push a button and nothing happened. And that's terrifying to people who rely on emotional manipulation. Because if you can't be rattled, you can't be controlled. Or picture the person who says no without guilt. Someone asks for a favor they don't have capacity for, and they simply say, "I can't do that right now." No long explanation, no apologizing, no guilt, just a boundary. And the person asking either respects it or reveals themselves as someone who only valued the relationship transactionally. Either way, the person who said no just protected their time, their energy, and their priorities. They remained sovereign. They didn't sacrifice their strategy for someone else's convenience. Or picture the person who feels the impulse to buy something, pauses, and asks, "Does this serve my long-term goal or just my short-term comfort?" And if it's just comfort, they don't buy it. They sit with the discomfort of wanting something and not having it. They train themselves that desire and action are separate things, that feeling something doesn't mean doing something. And over time, this training makes them dangerous, because they can delay gratification, they can think long-term, they can sacrifice now for later, and that ability, that brutal self-control, gives them a compounding advantage over everyone who can't. This is the difference between people who succeed and people who don't. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's self-control. It's the ability to feel an emotion and not be ruled by it, to feel an impulse and not be enslaved by it, to have a reaction and not be defined by it. This is the war Machiavelli was talking about, not the war against external enemies, the war against yourself, against your own reactivity, against your own impulses, against your own emotional weakness. And this war never ends. But if you win enough battles, you become someone people can't touch. Machiavelli wrote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. And before you can command others, you must command yourself. Before you can rule anything external, you must rule your internal kingdom. And right now, your internal kingdom is in chaos. Emotions are running wild. Impulses are making decisions. Reactions are happening without your consent. You're not a ruler. You're not even a subject. You're a battlefield where different parts of you are fighting for control, and none of them are you. So let's talk about how you actually build this. How you go from emotional slave to emotional sovereign. How you develop the kind of brutal self-control that makes you unmanipulatable. And I need to be clear about something. This isn't about suppressing emotions. Suppression creates pressure. Pressure creates explosions. You've seen this. People who keep it all in until they don't, until they snap, until they do something destructive because the pressure became unbearable. That's not self-control. That's a delayed explosion. Real self-control is about creating space between stimulus and response. It's about feeling the emotion fully, understanding what it's telling you, and then choosing, consciously, strategically, how to respond. It's not suppression, it's sovereignty. It's the difference between a dictator who rules through fear and a king who rules through strength. One creates resentment and rebellion, the other creates loyalty and stability. You want to be the king, not the dictator, the king of your own mind. Here's the framework: 3 layers, 3 practices, 3 transformations. Layer 1, the pause. This is the foundation of everything. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap. Right now, that gap is so small, it's invisible. Someone says something, you react instantly. You feel something, you act immediately. Stimulus and response are fused together. Your job is to expand that gap. to create space where there was none. And you do this through one simple practice. Pause before you respond. Someone criticizes you? Pause. Count to 3. Breathe, then respond. Someone triggers your anger? Pause. Feel the anger. Acknowledge it. Then decide how to respond. You want to buy something impulsively? Pause. Ask yourself, is this strategy or comfort? Then decide. The pause is everything, because in that pause, you reclaim agency. In that pause, you separate the emotion from the action. In that pause, you remember that you're not your emotions. You're the person experiencing them. And this feels unnatural at first, because you've spent years, maybe decades, reacting instantly. Reacting feels authentic. Reacting feels honest. But reacting is just being controlled by your neurochemistry. It's letting a chemical cascade in your brain make decisions for you. That's not authenticity. That's automation. And automation can be exploited. Let me give you a real scenario. Someone insults you publicly. Your immediate reaction is anger, rage even. Your body wants to lash out, to defend, to attack back. That's biology. That's your amygdala hijacking your prefrontal cortex. But if you pause, if you create that 3-second gap, something else becomes available. You can ask, what do they want? They want a reaction. They want to see you lose control. They want to expose you as emotional, as reactive, as weak. So what's the strategic response? Don't give them what they want. Respond with calm, or don't respond at all. Let the insult hang in the air, unacknowledged. Let them look foolish for trying to provoke someone who won't be provoked. See what just happened? The pause allowed you to shift from reactive to strategic, from emotional to tactical, from victim to operator. That's the power of the pause. That's layer 1. Layer 2, the reframe. Emotions aren't just chemical reactions. They're information, they're signals. But most people never learn to read the signals. They just react to them. Anger is telling you something. Anxiety is telling you something. Even impulses are telling you something. Your job is to decode the message instead of just obeying the command. Let's take anger. Most people experience anger and immediately externalize it. They made me angry. This situation is infuriating. I have every right to be mad. And sure, maybe you do. But what is the anger actually telling you? Usually, it's one of 3 things. A boundary was violated, an expectation wasn't met, or a value was challenged. If you can identify which one, you can address the root cause instead of just venting the emotion. Boundary violation? Address the boundary. That's not acceptable. Here's what needs to change. Expectation not met? Adjust the expectation or adjust your strategy. Value challenged? Either defend the value or recognize that not everyone shares it. But none of these require you to lose control. In fact, losing control makes them all worse. The anger is just pointing you toward the problem. It's not the solution. You are. Or take anxiety. Anxiety is your system telling you there's a perceived threat. But here's the key word: perceived. Most modern anxiety isn't about actual physical danger. It's about uncertainty, about lack of control, about imagined futures that may never happen. If you can reframe anxiety as your system being overprotective, you can thank it for trying to keep you safe and then override it with logic. Yes, this is uncertain. Yes, this is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous, and I'm moving forward anyway. If this is resonating, if you're seeing how much power you've been giving away through lack of self-control, hit that like button. Same with impulses. The impulse to buy something is your brain seeking dopamine. The impulse to check your phone is your brain seeking stimulation. The impulse to avoid difficult work is your brain seeking comfort. If you understand this, you can reframe the impulse. My brain wants an easy hit of pleasure, but I don't build my life around easy hits. I build my life around long-term outcomes. So I'm choosing the harder path because it serves future me. That's reframing. That's layer 2. Layer 3, the protocol. This is where self-control becomes systematic, because you can't rely on willpower every time. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes throughout the day. By the evening, you're running on fumes, and that's when you're most likely to break. So you need protocols. You need systems that remove the need for constant decision-making. You need automation that serves you instead of betraying you. Here's what this looks like. You know you struggle with impulsive spending? Protocol. Delete the shopping apps from your phone. Put a 48-hour rule in place. Anything you want to buy, you wait 48 hours. If you still want it after that, and it serves your goals, buy it. If not, the impulse has passed. You've created friction. Friction kills impulses. You know you struggle with emotional outbursts? Protocol. When you feel the anger rising, you physically remove yourself from the situation. You go for a walk. You take 5 minutes alone. You don't engage until the chemical cascade has passed. You've created space. Space creates choice. You know you struggle with procrastination? Protocol. You work in 25-minute blocks with no exceptions. No phone, no distractions, just 25 minutes of focused work. Then a break. Then another 25 minutes. You're not trying to do the whole project in one sitting. You're just committing to 25 minutes. You've lowered the activation energy. Lower activation energy means higher consistency. These protocols aren't sexy, they're not dramatic, but they work because they remove the reliance on moment-to-moment willpower and replace it with structure. And structure is how you win the long game. You're not trying to be perfect every moment. You're trying to be consistent over time. And consistency beats intensity every single time. Now here's where this gets interesting. When you start building self-control, real self-control, the kind that's visible in your behavior, people notice, and they respond in one of two ways. Some people respect it. They see your discipline, your emotional stability, your consistency, and they're drawn to it. They want to learn from it. They want to be around it. These are high-value people. They recognize strength when they see it. But other people? They hate it. They're threatened by it. Because your self-control highlights their lack of it. Your discipline makes their chaos obvious. Your emotional stability makes their reactivity look weak. And instead of improving themselves, they'll try to drag you down. They'll test you. They'll try to trigger you. They'll mock your discipline as too serious or no fun. They'll try to tempt you into breaking your protocols. Come on, one drink won't hurt. Why are you being so strict? You're no fun anymore. This is the test. This is where most people break, because they want to be liked. They want to fit in. They don't want to be seen as different or difficult. So they compromise. They break the protocol just this once, and once becomes twice. Twice becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes the default, and they're right back where they started. Enslaved to their impulses, controlled by their emotions, manipulated by everyone around them. Don't be that person. Understand that the people who try to break your discipline are revealing themselves. They're showing you that they need you weak to feel comfortable. They're showing you that they're invested in your mediocrity. These are not your people. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them be threatened. Let them leave if they need to. Because on the other side of that discomfort is a different circle, a circle of people who respect strength, who value discipline, who operate at a higher level. And those are the people worth having in your life. Now let me show you what happens when you master this. When you've built the pause, internalized the reframe, and implemented the protocols. When self-control has gone from something you try to do to something you are, you become a different category of person. You enter a different playing field, and the people still operating from emotional reactivity can't compete with you. They can't even understand you. You're in a negotiation. The other side tries to pressure you. They use urgency. They use scarcity. They try to trigger your fear of missing out. And it doesn't work, because you've trained yourself to pause. You've trained yourself to recognize manipulation tactics. You've trained yourself to separate emotional pressure from strategic decision-making. So you sit there, calm, unbothered, and you say, "I need time to consider this." And they don't know what to do with that. Because most people crack under pressure. Most people make emotional decisions when triggered, but you don't. You remain sovereign. Or you're in conflict. Someone is yelling. They're emotional. They're trying to pull you into their chaos, and you don't take the bait. You remain calm. You speak quietly. You acknowledge their emotion without matching it. "I can see you're upset. Let's talk about this when we're both calm." And you walk away, not out of fear, out of strategy, because you understand that engaging with someone in an emotional state is like trying to reason with a drunk person. It doesn't work, so you wait. You let them exhaust themselves, and then you engage when reason is possible. That's mastery. Or you're facing temptation, something you want right now that conflicts with what you want long-term. Could be food, could be a purchase, could be a relationship that you know is destructive but feels good. And you feel the pull, you feel the desire, but you've trained yourself to pause, to reframe, to follow protocol. So you sit with the discomfort, you acknowledge the want without acting on it. And you choose the long term over the short term. And every time you do this, you're not just avoiding a bad decision. You're strengthening the neural pathway that makes the next right decision easier. You're building the muscle. You're becoming someone who can be trusted by yourself and by others to do what you say you're going to do. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." The fool eventually learns self-control, after enough failures, enough pain, enough consequences. But by then, they've wasted years. They've burned bridges. They've destroyed opportunities. The wise man learns it now. The wise man understands that self-control isn't a constraint, it's a multiplier. It's what turns potential into results, talent into achievement, strategy into victory. And here's the beautiful irony. The more self-control you develop, the more freedom you have. Sounds backward, doesn't it? But it's true, because most people are enslaved to their impulses. They can't not check their phone. They can't not indulge. They can't not react. They're on autopilot, and autopilot is driving them in circles. But when you develop self-control, you can do anything. You can sit in discomfort. You can delay gratification indefinitely. You can make decisions based on strategy instead of feeling. That's freedom, real freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want in the moment. The freedom to become whoever you want over time. And this freedom creates possibilities that don't exist for emotionally reactive people. You can take risks they can't take, because you can handle the emotional discomfort of uncertainty. You can build things they can't build, because you can stay disciplined through the boring middle when motivation fades. You can maintain relationships they can't maintain, because you can regulate your emotions instead of dumping them on others. You can achieve goals they can't achieve, because you can delay gratification for years if necessary. This is why self-control is the foundation of everything. Not because it makes you robotic, not because it makes you cold, but because it makes you capable. Capable of doing hard things, capable of thinking long-term, capable of being trusted, capable of ruling your own mind before you try to influence anyone else's. Let me give you the hard truth. Most people will never develop this. Most people will stay enslaved to their emotions for their entire lives. They'll be puppets, and they won't even realize it. They'll blame their circumstances. They'll blame other people. They'll blame bad luck. But the real reason they're stuck is simple. They can't control themselves. They can't sit with discomfort. They can't delay gratification. They can't pause before reacting. And so they live at the mercy of whatever they feel in the moment. That's not a life. That's just existing. That's just being a biological robot, running programs you didn't choose, executing reactions you didn't decide. You're here because you're different. Or at least you want to be. You're here because some part of you recognizes that emotional slavery is a dead end. Some part of you knows that you're capable of more. Some part of you is tired of watching yourself sabotage your own life through lack of self-control. Good. Hold on to that. Because that part is right. You are capable of more. You can develop brutal self-control. You can rule your emotions instead of being ruled by them. But it requires something most people aren't willing to give: daily practice. This isn't a one-time fix. This isn't a hack. This isn't a secret technique that changes everything overnight. This is a practice, a daily practice. Every day you'll face moments where your emotions want to override your strategy. Every day you'll feel impulses that conflict with your goals. Every day you'll be tempted to react instead of respond. And every day you have to choose. Pause or react. Reframe or indulge. Follow protocol or break it. And the choice you make in that moment determines who you're becoming. Choose poorly and you're training yourself to stay weak. Choose well and you're building strength. It's that simple. Not easy, but simple. And simple is what you need. Not more complexity, not more theory. Just consistent practice of the fundamentals. Pause, reframe, protocol, over and over and over, until it's not something you do, until it's who you are. And when you reach that point, when self-control has become your default, you'll look back at who you are now and barely recognize them. You'll see how reactive you were, how impulsive, how emotionally volatile, how easy to manipulate. And you'll feel grateful, not ashamed, grateful, because that version of you had the courage to admit they were enslaved and the discipline to break free. That version of you started the work that transformed into this version. And this version is dangerous. This version can't be controlled. This version can't be manipulated. This version rules themselves first, and that makes them capable of ruling anything else they choose. Machiavelli understood that before you can be a prince, you must first be a warrior. Before you can rule others, you must first conquer yourself. Before you can command respect, you must first command your own mind. This is the war that matters. This is the battle that determines everything. Win this, and you win. Lose this, and nothing else you achieve will be stable, because it'll all be built on a foundation of emotional chaos. So here's your mission. Starting today, implement the 3 layers. The pause. Before you react to anything, count to 3. Breathe. Create space between stimulus and response. The reframe. When you feel an emotion, ask what it's telling you. Extract the information. Don't just obey the command. The protocol. Identify your weakest points and build systems that remove the need for constant willpower. Make discipline automatic. Do this for 30 days. Not perfectly. You'll fail. You'll have moments where you react, where you give in to impulse, where you break protocol. That's fine. That's expected. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be better than yesterday. You're trying to win more battles than you lose. And if you win more than you lose, you're moving in the right direction. And if you move in the right direction long enough, you arrive at a destination most people never reach: emotional sovereignty. And once you're there, once you've built this foundation, everything else becomes possible. The career you want, the relationships you want, the life you want, because you're no longer sabotaging yourself. You're no longer hemorrhaging power through emotional reactivity. You're no longer giving your enemies the blueprint for how to control you. You've become the fortress, the immovable object, the person who can't be rattled, can't be manipulated, can't be broken, because you rule yourself first. If you're committed to building this, if you're ready to stop being a puppet and become a king, subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me which layer you're implementing first. Pause, reframe, or protocol. Share this with someone who's still enslaved to their emotions and doesn't even know it. This is your moment. This is where you decide, am I going to keep being controlled by my emotions, or am I going to control them? Am I going to keep being a slave, or am I going to become sovereign? Am I going to keep giving power away, or am I going to accumulate it? The choice is yours. But understand, not choosing is a choice. Staying the same is a choice. And every day you delay is a day you're training yourself that discipline doesn't matter, that self-control is optional, that emotional slavery is acceptable. It's not, and you know it. That's why you're here. So take the knowledge, implement the framework, fight the war, win the battles, build the fortress, become unbreakable. Because the world doesn't need more reactive people. It doesn't need more emotional slaves. It doesn't need more puppets. It needs rulers. People who rule themselves first. People who can be trusted with power because they've proven they can handle the only power that matters. Power over themselves. Because the people who master self-control don't just change their own lives. They change the game for everyone around them. Be that person. Build brutal self-control. Rule your emotions. And watch how everything changes. Because when you change, the world has no choice but to respond differently. You're no longer manipulatable. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer weak. You're a force. And forces don't ask for permission. They don't wait for approval. They just move. Decisively, strategically, unstoppably. That's your future. If you choose it. If you build it. Starting now.